And I'm watching our time, and I know that for your publicist agents, anybody that's listening, I know they're watching the time and thinking, well, they haven't really brought up blue skies yet. So I have more questions about learning to be a writer and about your writing habits. But for everybody listening, let's talk about Blue Skies, which is absolutely available now and worth reading. And the thing I try never to do is summarize another author's book when you're right here. I wouldn't make you sit through that when you could better pitch your book than I could. Plus, I'm bad with spoilers, so I've learned just be quiet when it comes to somebody else's book until I find out what you're comfortable sharing. So, what do we need to know about Blue Skies?
Okay, so Blue Skies is a story about Glory B. Bennett, and she lost her father on D-Day on Omaha Beach. But she still believes that a miracle might happen and he could return to her and her town of Gladiola, Texas. So when the Mercy train boxcar, which I can explain a little bit, is scheduled to make an unexpected stop in her town, she knows that's the sign. This is the time when Daddy's going to come home.
So, yeah, tell us a little bit about the Mercy boxcar.
It was a grassroots effort, which I was unfamiliar with until about 20 years ago, started by a Frenchman, a French war veteran named André Picard. And he wanted to fill a boxcar of gifts from the French to send over to America to thank us for all we did before, after, and during World War II. But instead of one boxcar, the French citizens filled 49. And they shipped them over to the East Coast, and then railroads all across the states sent them on the rails to each one to the state's capital. And then they were put in museums, or a few gifts, I understand, were distributed. But I fell in love with that effort, and that was actually the spark for the story.
And it's a sad-ish premise because Glory B's father's died. She's waiting for the body to come to so they can have closure. And yet it's not an overly sad story, despite the premise. There are laughs throughout. You're going to have a good time, esteemed audience, I promise. So what tips do you have for writers who have a somewhat sad premise, which one might argue is as humanity's lot? When you have a bit of a sad premise, especially for middle grade readers, what tips do you have for not undercutting that, but keeping the tone and the story light, keeping the pace fast, and not bumming the audience out for 200 pages, but telling a story despite the sad premise?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the strengths of middle grade is that middle grade novels offer hope. And I think that's what needs to run throughout the story. And yes, there are sad events. There is sadness in the world, but there can also be light. And light can come from a sad time.
And who, aside from everyone listening, who is the ideal reader for Blue Skies?
Well, I think it's someone who is a dreamer, someone who does want or seek hope, someone who is passionate, someone who wants a heartwarming story, and someone who is interested in authenticity.
And I'm chuckling because I'm just remembering that the very first line of your book, if I may read part of your own book to you, miracles happen in Gladiola, Texas, population 3,421. And then she goes on to say, I want a miracle of my very own. So now that I'm hearing you talk about this is a story about hope. Well, there it is. My God, we've got a thesis statement right there at the start. You've set the tone. Here comes the hope. So I think that goes a long way right there to letting me know how you're going to keep this story heartwarming and engaging and not overly sad.